Samantha, divorce is fine with me. If you can't cook for 15 relatives. Bobby, I told you yesterday, didn't I? I'm feeling sick because of morning sickness. What? Morning sickness isn't a disease, is it? Stop making excuses. Hurry up and get ready, slowpoke. Look, there's only 3 hours until the relatives arrive. Bobby spat out his words without hiding his irritation. He showed no concern for me or the baby. But that was nothing new. I'd already reached my limit of patience. I've asked someone else to cook. I knew you wouldn't listen to me anyway. It'll be ready soon, so just wait quietly. You asked someone else? What the hell are you doing? I told you to cook. You know what happens if you defy me, don't you? Bobby glared at me with sharp eyes, but I ignored him and picked up my phone to make a call. A few minutes later, as the first guest arrived, Bobby started to tremble. What's going on? Why are you here? Hey, Samantha, did you call them? Bobby was more flustered than I'd ever seen him before. My preemptive strike seemed to have worked perfectly. Bobby, this is gonna be a hellish day for you. Even if you cry and apologize, I won't forgive you. I whispered to myself and began my counterattack. Hey, Bobby. It's me, your beloved Maria. Why are you so surprised? You wanted to see me, right? You said you loved me the most. So, I came, relying on your love. Welcome, Maria. Thank you for coming to our family event. As the wife, I appreciate it. Oh, no, it's me who should be grateful. I'm so happy to greet all the relatives. Please allow me to thank you as the mistress. As Maria and I greeted each other with big smiles, Bobby, sweating like a waterfall, couldn't help but shout. Wait. What's with this greeting? What's this situation? How come my wife and mistress are talking to each other? Oh, I slipped and called her my mistress. He's really panicking. Poor thing. Maria spoke words of sympathy, but her face showed no pity. I couldn't help but smile. Only Bobby was frantically darting his eyes around. It'd be fun to watch Bobby panic, but we've got a lot to talk about, so I'll continue. This is my revenge on you. Revenge? Yes. You were so kind right after we got married, but after about 6 months, your attitude did a complete 180, and you started treating me like a slave, didn't you? I desperately tried to figure out if I'd done something to upset you. So, I tried my best to meet your expectations. I even followed your instructions for clothes and makeup. How foolish I was. Samantha, stay strong. Seeing my voice tremble, Maria supported my shoulder. I took her hand and smiled softly. Bobby watched our exchange, looking more confused than ever. Yes, that's the face I wanted to see. I continued talking to push my husband further into despair. As I was desperately trying, Bobby's behavior became increasingly suspicious. He would come home late, and even on his days off, he would say he had work and be absent. I found it strange, so I investigated Bobby on my own and discovered his affair with Maria. All my efforts felt completely denied. Angered, I decided to invite Maria to the family dinner to retaliate against you. Do you understand this situation now? What a selfish thing to do! As a wife, you should just obey your husband in silence. Otherwise, what's the point of our marriage vows? Maria, you should leave. I never said you could come to my house. My husband said in a menacing voice, trying to push Maria towards the entrance. However, Maria stood her ground, not moving. Hey, what are you doing? I told you to leave. I'm clearly saying I don't want to, right? Besides, I haven't said everything I want to say yet. Bobby, you told me you were single. Why do you have a wife? That's because if I had known you were married, I wouldn't have gotten involved with you. I don't want to be an affair partner. That makes me legally wrong. You deceived me and made me commit a crime. I'll never forgive you. Seeing Maria's demonic face, my husband's face turned pale. Shut up. Just leave already. He grabbed Maria's hand and forcefully pulled her towards the entrance. Maria continued to hurl insults even as she was dragged along. Finally, she was close to the entrance door. Just as my husband reached for the door handle, the door opened from the outside. Seeing this, my husband looked outside suspiciously. What? Hearing my husband's foolish scream, I smirked. There stood a woman, seemingly in her 20s, with beautiful straight hair. She smiled gently and spoke to my husband. It's been a while, Bobby. Your beloved Diana has arrived. I heard there's a family dinner today. I'm so grateful to be invited to such an important event. This can't be. My husband turned to me with a face drained of blood. Oh, it seems I didn't explain well earlier. During my investigation, I found out not only about Maria but also about your affair with Diana. I thought it would be good for Diana to be here too. You're kidding. Ugh. As he tried to complain to me, Diana grabbed his head and forced him to face her. Her face remained smiling, but her eyes were filled with madness. My dear Bobby? I didn't know. I had no idea you had such a lovely wife. Not a word, really. You said you were single, didn't you? And who is this woman you're still holding? Diana looked at Maria, who was still in my husband's grasp. Maria also looked at Diana, still in disbelief. Bobby, you told me, didn't you? That you loved me and that I was your most precious treasure. Then who is this woman? You weren't having an affair with her behind my back, were you? Stop! My skull is gonna crack. Don't squeeze my head with all your strength, you martial artist. Maria is a relative's child. She's a distant relative who sometimes visits us, and we were just about to pick up some more relatives together. We've been close since childhood, and it just looks friendly. Oh? Is that so? Oh my, I panicked for nothing. As Diana loosened her grip, I quickly took out my phone and showed her a picture of my husband and Maria leaving a hotel. I had actually been tailing my husband and taking photos to gather evidence. Diana, don't be fooled. This is the truth about these two. So they were having an affair. Not only did he cheat on me, but he also lied to me. I've lost all respect for you, Bobby. Stop it! Don't pull my hair! I've been worried about my hair falling out lately. It's getting thinner. My hair is getting even thinner. Well, let me join in too. Oh, this spot looks thin. Maria, who also didn't know about Diana, joined in from behind to pull my husband's hair. Unable to bear it any longer, my husband sacrificed a few strands of hair to escape from the two women's clutches and faced them, breathing heavily. I can't believe Samantha even took secret photos. All right, let's talk this over. I'll set up another time to discuss this, so please leave for today. Seeing my husband barely able to speak, both Maria and Diana seemed to ponder the situation. Although they knew from me that my husband was married, they were shocked to learn about the other affair partner. They might need some time to process this information. However, the more time passed, the more it would work in my husband's favor. He could destroy the evidence and come up with some cunning plan. I smirked. Footsteps could be heard from outside. The third visitor was almost there. Excuse me. The door seems to be unlocked, so I'll come in. What? Mom, Dad? Why are you here so early? It was my in-laws. Both of them were as red as boiled octopuses, clearly furious. The family dinner was supposed to be 3 hours later, so my husband was bewildered. Why? Do you really not understand why we're here? We raised you with strict love, but it seems you've left both your pride and your brain somewhere along the way. Could it be, did you arrange this too? My husband turned to me, and I silently deepened my smile. You're the worst. Instead of obeying your husband, you, a useless woman, caused such a fuss on the day the family is supposed to gather. And you even called my elderly parents after secretly investigating me? You're less than human. You're the scum here, you idiot son. having affairs while being married, and with 2 women at the same time. Do you know how we felt when Samantha consulted us? We were so ashamed. Our child, whom we bore and raised with love and discipline, committed such foolishness. We can't even look Samantha in the eye. Yes, I had already revealed my husband's affairs to my in-laws. I knew my husband well. No matter how much I accused him, he would never admit his fault. He looked down on me. He thought he could talk his way out of it and had probably come up with excuses. That's why I enlisted the help of third parties. People he could never defy his parents. Wait, Mom, Dad, listen to me. I'm the real victim here. These women are my stalkers. They've been persistently following me and have now barged into our home. I was just fighting them off to protect Samantha and our unborn child. Enough with the excuses. Do you plan to lie to us too? We already know. We have evidence of you dating and entering hotels with them, complete with photos. Damn it, too much. As my husband clicked his tongue, Maria stepped forward. We understand we've done something unforgivable. But it's the result, not the cause. We were deceived by Bobby too. Exactly. We were both told by Bobby that he was single. We didn't know we were affair partners or that there was another one besides ourselves until today. It's true that Samantha is the biggest victim, but we are also victims of Bobby's lies. Hey, don't say weird things. My husband shouted desperately, but my in-laws sighed without even looking at him. When did you stop feeling guilty about lying? The sense of right and wrong is created by a sense of guilt. Without it, you're just a beast. What drove you to this? We didn't claim to be perfect parents, but we tried our best to raise you without hardship. Still, you cheated because something was missing, right? What's done is done, but at least tell us the reason. It seemed my in-laws had decided to trust Maria and Diana, who were strangers, over their own son. Given how much trust he'd betrayed, it was only natural, even between parent and child. In fact, it might be because he's their son that they're hardening their hearts to face the truth. They believe it's their duty as parents. I gently placed my hand on my belly. I'll be a parent soon, too. Maybe I'm getting a valuable lesson in parenting right now. My husband lowered his head a bit, showing a contrite posture. The truth is, work hasn't been going well. I was mentally cornered. I was constantly worried that I was causing trouble for my brother because of me. I took it out on Samantha, and the affairs with Maria and Diana were the result of accumulated stress. I'm sorry. In the end, he forcefully apologized, surprising everyone present. Maria and Diana looked solemn, and my in-laws exchanged troubled glances. My husband worked at his older brother's company, so appealing to the bond between brothers seemed to have worked. That's the experience of a long-time working man. He knows the impact of such an apology. But while he might fool his affair partners and in-laws, he can't deceive me. Because I know the truth that this apologetic attitude is just an act. Now, I'll reveal it to everyone here. Everyone, don't be fooled. Bobby's apologetic attitude is all an act. What? Even though I'm apologizing, are you going to ignore my sincere feelings of remorse? You're good at putting on a show. You might have made it as an actor. But unfortunately, I'm one step ahead of you. I smirked and pulled out my phone, calling a certain person. My husband's face darkened instantly. Of course, it would. This scenario was already the 4th time. He must be dreading the near future. He might not know the specifics, but he could guess the general outcome. But sadly, God won't stop or rewind time. Soon, hurried footsteps echoed from the entrance, and my husband's shoulders slumped. This time, 15 relatives stormed into the house. What the heck is today? Why do people keep barging in without permission? This is my house. And 15 people? That's too many. Couldn't you come 1 or 2 at a time like before? Oh, in that case, we'd have to repeat this commotion every 15 minutes about 8 more times. Would you prefer that? No, that's tough too. My husband hugged himself, trembling. He seemed to imagine himself being accused by new people little by little. Leading the group of 15 was his older brother. Everyone, centered around his brother, looked furious, and the pressure increased with each step they took closer. Next to his brother was his wife, Linda. Linda looked pale and seemed about to faint. Seeing her, my husband's face contorted in an impossible grimace. Sorry for barging in without notice, Bobby. But I thought you'd understand why we came earlier than planned. No idea what you're talking about. Anyway, we don't have any food ready, but make yourselves at home. Yeah. I also want to clear up this big cloud in my heart quickly and relax. So, let's get straight to the point. You had an affair with my Linda, didn't you? Whoa! At the shocking revelation from my brother-in-law, my husband shouted over him. He probably didn't want anyone else to hear it, but unfortunately, everyone did. Maria and Diana were left speechless, and my in-laws were so stunned they seemed to turn to stone. Wait, an affair, not just us, but a third person? And with your brother's wife? Did I forget to give birth to my moral compass? You idiot! My father-in-law tried to jump at my husband, but Maria, Diana, and I held him back. My husband tried to hide behind his brother, only to be kicked away. He seemed to have hurt his pinky toe on the table leg and was in great pain. Serves him right. Everyone present was smirking. Bumping your pinky toe hurts, doesn't it? I know because I've experienced it. But the pain in my heart right now is like night and day compared to that, you jerk. Wait. This is some misunderstanding. I wouldn't steal your wife, ah. My husband fell silent instantly. By now, everyone, including my in-laws, had surrounded him, glaring fiercely. You're not making excuses now, are you? First, you were caught with Maria, then Diana, and Samantha exposed them one by one. Naturally, I have evidence too. I noticed Linda's strange behavior a while ago. She started caring about her appearance a lot and was going out more, according to the neighbors. When I investigated, I found out about your affair. How could everything be revealed in one day? Samantha and my brother. Exactly. Michael and I collaborated. We exchanged information and planned this. Today, with all the relatives gathered, we executed it. My husband slumped his shoulders. I can't believe you had an affair with Linda too. I'm ashamed I didn't notice. Sorry for the surprise, Dad. I thought it would be better to hear it directly from Michael about Linda. We originally planned to tell you during the family dinner. But after Samantha told me about another affair, it turned into this. Sorry for the consecutive issues. It's not Michael who should apologize. Samantha and you are both victims. Don't hang your head. Look up. My mother-in-law gently patted my brother-in-law's shoulder, easing his tense expression. Even as adults, a mother's presence is mighty, I thought, as my husband suddenly started laughing. What is this situation? First, affair partners burst in, then the whole family comes to accuse me. I'm exhausted. In just this hour, my husband seemed to age 10 years. Seeing my chance, I crouched down to meet his gaze, still lying on the floor. Now, will you finally tell me why you had so many affairs? Linda was the one I truly loved from the beginning. I knew her since college and always liked her. But Linda married my brother. I had no choice but to give up. So, I married Samantha to forget about Linda. A sharp pain stabbed my chest. Hearing from someone I once truly loved that I was just a tool to forget someone else was more painful than I imagined. Unconsciously, I gripped my chest tightly. My husband continued talking without even glancing at me. Life with Samantha was peaceful, but I still couldn't forget Linda. So, I started cheating with Maria and Diana. Then, a miracle happened. A miracle? Yes, after I started the affairs, Linda approached me. Everything went smoothly from there. Linda stepped forward, tiredly smiling next to my husband. She crouched down to meet his gaze, just like I did. Let me explain too. I've always liked Bobby. But my family was poor, so I needed to marry Michael, who runs a company. However, I couldn't forget Bobby. So, you had affairs with 3 women, including Linda? Both my husband and Linda nodded silently. For a moment, the room fell into a dead silence. The silence was broken by my brother-in-law. It sounds like you're trying to justify it as some kind of pure love, but what you did is the lowest. My husband and Linda looked up, flustered, and tried to compose themselves. I'm sorry. I wronged you, brother. You even blessed my marriage with Samantha. Yes, we got a bit carried away. I'm sorry. Both my husband and Linda apologized deeply. That triggered everyone else to start criticizing them. Love is about caring for others. Selfish emotions that hurt those around you aren't love. They're ugly. If you truly loved each other, you should have faced it head-on when you realized your feelings. Letting it fester only twisted things. Feelings for someone can rot if left too long. If you missed your chance, move on gracefully like an adult. Father and mother are right. You two were too selfish. None of us can forgive you. Bobby, you're fired. Linda, we're divorcing. Go wherever you want, but never show your faces here again. Hearing these words from both a family and a boss, my husband visibly panicked. Linda turned pale at the word divorce. It's obvious that this is what happens when you cheat, but why can't those who sin think of the consequences? I'm sorry. Please, anything but divorce. I'll do anything. I can't go back to a miserable life. I can't lose my job. I've worked at my brother's company for so long. Where am I supposed to go now? My brother-in-law sighed deeply. You really only think about yourselves. If you'd sincerely reflected on your actions, there might have been a chance for redemption. But now, I have no choice but to cast you out. At his cold words, the relatives all nodded. Suddenly, my husband glared at my brother-in-law with bloodshot eyes. What the hell? When I try to be humble, you just keep torturing me. That's why the people you loved rejected you. Brother, Samantha, Maria, and Diana. Learn from me. I got love from the person I wanted because I didn't give up despite the adversity. True love is great. It's nothing like substitutes. Wait a minute. Substitutes? Are you talking about us? Yes, that's right. Samantha, Maria, and Diana were all substitutes for the real thing. I was never satisfied because they were just stand-ins. Nothing compares to the real thing. I was speechless. I finally realized. My husband had been directing my makeup and clothing style to make me more like Linda. I felt a heavy weight settle in my stomach. Maria and Diana were trembling, enduring their sadness. My husband continued, even mentioning his brother. I've always hated my brother. He's always been good at both studies and sports, popular with everyone. I've always been known as Michael's younger brother. Even though I have my own name, Bobby. But Linda chose me. Not my brother, me. I was a better man than him. My husband laughed maniacally, looking deranged. The relatives instinctively took a step back. I want Linda. If I have Linda, I don't need anything else. So, divorce me, Samantha. Are you really sure? You will definitely regret it. I'll never regret it. Don't cling to me like a sore loser. Come on, Linda, let's go. Let's build a new future together. Bobby. With that, my husband and Linda ran out of the house hand in hand. Those left behind stared at the entrance, stunned. My in-laws and brother-in-law turned to me and apologized. We're so sorry for this. It seems we failed in raising him, We're truly sorry. Not only my brother but also my wife caused you trouble. I don't know how to make amends. Please, don't say such things. Thank you for your concern. But don't worry too much. As for my husband, he's already finished. All three of them looked at me with puzzled expressions. I just smiled calmly without saying anything more. The next day, I received a call from my husband. Even though I expected it, the call came so quickly that I nearly spat out my coffee. Not wanting to seem too eager, I ignored it and spent the whole day shopping before finally answering. Hello. Oh, Samantha. You finally answered. Listen, Linda disappeared overnight. Could she have been involved in some incident? Should I report it to the police? Or maybe the Linda I ran away with was a spirit or something, and the real Linda is held captive somewhere. Hearing my husband babbling ridiculously, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Hey, I'm serious here. Sorry, but a spirit? When did you get into the occult? But you're right about Linda being somewhere else. Really? So she is captured by someone. Could it be my brother? If so, I won't forgive him. I'll go get her back. Actually, she's just enjoying herself at her true lover's house. With a short what, my husband fell silent. The sudden quiet was almost painful to my ears. Still, imagining the look on his face made even the silence an enjoyable moment. What are you talking about? I'm Linda's true love. Don't you recognize the pattern here? Linda's true love was already married. Just like you tried to move on from her, she found a replacement too. That replacement was you. No, that can't be true. But recently, her true love got divorced. So she doesn't need a replacement anymore. Ironic, isn't it? You were just Linda's substitute. And now, Linda is happily living with the one she truly loves. And they lived happily ever after. Oh no! All I could hear was my husband sobbing. I ended the call with a smirk. I had known for a while that Linda's true love had gotten divorced. So, while I thought my husband would eventually be discarded by Linda even if they were temporarily together, I didn't expect it to happen overnight. However, this has left an indelible scar on him. Afterward, he apparently blamed Linda for using him as a substitute. But it was just karma, as he was only experiencing what he had done to others. My husband finally realized his mistakes and now sought reconciliation with me. Please! I promise to make you happy this time. Sorry, but I don't need a father who neglected his own child. I will never forgive you. Please! My father, mother, brother, and all our relatives won't talk to me. I only have you left, Samantha. That's the price of your sins. It's too late now. My husband gasped in shock. I should have cherished those closest to me. These were the last words we exchanged. After that, we divorced. I demanded child support. As my brother-in-law declared, my ex-husband was fired from his job and, due to the payments to me, faced financial hardship. His actions became a topic of gossip in the industry, making it difficult for him to find another job. Now, he lives alone in a cheap apartment, working day jobs. Linda, on the other hand, was also ultimately discarded by her true love after being toyed with. She was disowned by her family over the divorce issue and had no one to help her. I saw her once in a deserted park, looking miserable, but I don't know what happened to her after that. As for me, I safely gave birth to a baby boy. Juggling unfamiliar childcare was overwhelming, but a year later, thanks to Maria and Diana, I was able to find a job. Having been victims of my ex-husband's deceit, we formed a bond like comrades in arms. We still keep in touch and meet for tea occasionally, and I always hope they find good partners. Children grow up quickly, and my son is growing well. Watching his innocent gestures, carefree smile, and peaceful sleeping face fills me with indescribable happiness. Nothing could ever replace my son or this cherished feeling. Therefore, I vow to protect him above all else. A life without children is miserable, huh? My daughter is adorable and a genius," Cohen Kirby said with a grin on his face, causing my insides to boil with rage. It was like he had forgotten all about how he had treated me in the past, casually striking up this conversation and then saying this. I couldn't help but feel furious. However, I reminded myself of the situation I was in and managed to suppress my anger. Carefully maintaining a cheerful appearance, I decided to respond to Cohen. Even if he got mad, it wouldn't come close to what I had endured. I called my daughter, Sarah, who was a little distance away, and proudly said, "Well, let me introduce my daughter then." I probably had the smile I envisioned on my face. As I showed that to Cohen, I hugged Sarah, who had run over to me. "Huh?" Cohen looked at us with a dumbfounded expression, his mouth agape in surprise. He couldn't accept the reality of the woman he had always looked down upon. Jolie, who had been smirking by Cohen's side until then, seemed unable to hide her shock either. Ignoring them, I turned to talk to Sarah. "My name is Kyrie Allen, a 51-year-old businesswoman. Whenever I mention that my daughter is 12 years old, people are usually surprised. Yes, I married late, but there's a story behind that. Actually, I'm divorced, and I didn't have any children from that marriage. I met my ex-husband, Cohen Kirby, in a blind date. A friend of mine, who was worried about my perpetual workaholism and unwillingness to get married, arranged a party for me. That's where Cohen took a liking to me and started pursuing me intensely. That said, I still had no intention of doing so at first, and I was still cowed by Cohen's favors. But he was so persistent that I eventually warmed up to the idea. As a result, Cohen and I started dating and soon got married. Once married, Cohen, who was very keen on having children, was serious about trying to conceive. However, being in my late 30s then, I felt an immense pressure. Whether it was due to that or not, we had trouble conceiving. Gradually, Cohen's attitude toward me cooled, eventually turning contemptuous. "What's up, infertile? Did you pick up the cleaning I asked about before?" He began referring to me as infertile and treating me like a servant. It was incredibly frustrating, and I desperately looked for a solution. I even went to the hospital, fearing the worst, but all the tests showed that I was perfectly healthy. In fact, the doctor even suggested that stress might be causing it, leaving me feeling utterly helpless and downhearted. I tried everything, watching my diet, taking supplements. Despite all efforts, I still couldn't get pregnant. Wondering if the problem might not be mine, I suggested to Cohen Kirby that he should get tested. "Hey, Cohen." I went to the doctor, and they found nothing wrong with me. "So, there might be a chance that, it could be you." "I think you should get tested," I said. Cohen's face turned red with anger immediately. "What? You're saying something's wrong with me? It's just you who can't get pregnant, don't you dare doubt me." "But there's nothing wrong with me, and I've been undergoing treatment for so long. If we can't have kids, it only makes sense that the issue might be with you." "That's impossible. I'm always fine, it has to be your fault, you're the only one to blame." Cohen stubbornly refused to consider my suggestion, insisting the problem was mine. At first, I argued back, but constant accusations wore me down. Finally, one of Cohen's remarks broke me completely. "What's the point of you being a woman if you can't even have kids?" He said it so dismissively that I was left speechless. Not because I agreed with him, but because I was shocked by the extent of his cruelty. I managed the house and supported Cohen, who also worked, as best as I could. Yet, just because I couldn't bear children, he dismissed me entirely. My spirit broken, I couldn't bring myself to ask him to get tested again. The thought of hearing those same harsh words made me too afraid to speak up. Sensing this, Cohen began ordering me around even more. I'm beat. I don't want the usual beer today, I'm craving that import one they sell at the liquor store downtown. Hey, you, since you're obviously not busy being infertile, go get it for me, now. He grew more audacious, treating me like a mere errand runner, laughing smugly. Any hint of resistance from me was met with even more vile words. I endured, day after day, without a thought of anything else. You'd think I'd have left him by now, right? But being a latecomer to marriage, I feared I'd never marry again if I left this one. Plus, I was somehow convinced that divorce was shameful, making it hard for me to take that step. So, time just passed, and I turned 38, when things suddenly took a dramatic turn. At that time, I was still working and enduring the infertility snoring that continued almost daily. Come on, you should know what I don't like by now. How can you expect me to eat such awful food? This is exactly why you're... That day, I couldn't hold back anymore and snapped back. What does food have to do with not having kids? I can't stand it anymore. Enough is enough, I exclaimed. Cohen leaped up, yelling at me fiercely. What's with that attitude? You can't even fulfill your role as a woman, and you dare complain to me when I get home from work. His unreasonable argument infuriated me. What role as a woman? If that means having kids, then you share the responsibility. I got tested, and there's nothing wrong with me. But you refuse to get tested, avoiding your responsibility. And yet, you have the nerve to complain only to me. It's just unfair. Cohen Kirby seemed a bit flustered by my rare rebuttal. But he quickly regained his composure and started hurling insults again. Why are you so stubborn? If it were her, she'd immediately reflect and apologize in this situation. His words stopped me in my tracks. Before I could even ask who her was, Cohen's expression changed to one of regret. And he quickly turned away, leaving the house without another word. He didn't come home that day, and I grew increasingly suspicious. From his tone, it was clear there was another woman in the picture. This meant he was cheating, which could potentially lead to a divorce. Not because I couldn't have children, but because of Cohen's infidelity. With this in mind, I acted quickly. I searched the internet for a nearby private investigator and hired them to look into Cohen's recent suspicious behavior and his mistress. A few weeks later, the investigator's report arrived. During this time, Cohen came home but avoided eye contact with me. He even stopped the verbal abuse. It was a surprising and somewhat more comfortable turn of events that made me regret not taking action sooner. I should have to do it. As these thoughts crossed my mind, I looked through the report. It confirmed Cohen's infidelity and included evidence and details about his mistress. Her name was Jolie. A 23-year-old, obviously much younger than both Cohen and me. They apparently started seeing each other right after I first suggested Cohen get tested. It meant this affair had been going on for years. Filled with sudden rage of finding it out, I decided to proceed with a divorce. While I prepared, Cohen was surprisingly calm. It was allowing me to make steady progress. Finally, I decided to confront Cohen about the divorce. Cohen, we need to talk. It's not about the test, it's something more important, I said as he just came home from work, making a displeased face. What now? I've got something to tell you too. Make it quick, he said, looking bored but somewhat attentive while fiddling with his phone. Before he could change his mind, I quickly presented him with the investigator's report. You're cheating, Cohen. I've had it thoroughly investigated, so there's no escaping this. Between the child issue and your infidelity, I can't take it anymore. I want a divorce, I said, thrusting the report and a partially filled-in divorce papers at him as a sign of my will. Instead of being flustered, Cohen smirked and took the divorce papers from my hand. Well, aren't you prepared? Such perfect timing almost makes me question your precognitive abilities, he remarked while operating his phone. Suddenly, with a click, the front door opened. Hello there, excuse my intrusion. Oh, nice to meet you. I'm Jolie, the one who's gonna marry Cohen soon. The person who entered through the front door was the same one in the photos enclosed with the private investigator's report. Jolie, who looked even younger and cuter in person than in the photos, greeted me with a smirk. Today was actually the day I planned to introduce you to her. And to think you'd prepare the divorce papers for me, I didn't see that coming. If you had been this considerate all along, maybe I would have stuck around, but it's too late now. Cohen said half-jokingly, taking the divorce papers and walking into the living room. I was too shocked to grasp the situation and stood there, frozen. Soon, Cohen emerged from the living room with the divorce papers filled out. He handed them to me with a sly smile, saying, "This sure saves a lot of trouble. We're no longer husband and wife, so leave now. Jolie's pregnant, and I want her to have as little stress as possible." Faced with Jolie's and Cohen's malicious grins, I lost my composure. Snatching the divorce papers from Cohen, I ran to my room. I grabbed my already packed bags and left the house without a word. Fast forward 13 years. I had come to see how the project I was involved in had been completed. My job is as a professional consultant, and this time I was tasked with designing an apartment building that would be disaster-resistant and children-friendly. After Cohen introduced me to Jolie, I took refuge in a nearby business hotel. I waited until dawn to submit the divorce papers to the city hall, then moved from hotel to hotel. After that, I was finally settling into an apartment and focusing on my career. Divorcing Cohen seemed to lighten my spirits, and my work progressed smoothly. I got lucky with business opportunities and expanded my network. This revitalization led to my appointment as the project leader for this urban development, a long endeavor that had finally come to fruition. There was a small celebration at the site, crowded with many people. Then, a familiar, unpleasant voice caught my ear. "Hey, long time no see. Still all alone, huh? I came here to buy one of these condos for my family of 3. Not that it matters to you." I regretfully turned towards the voice. I saw Cohen, Jolie. And also there were their daughter, who must have been in Jolie's womb back then. "A life without children is miserable, huh? My daughter is adorable and a genius," Cohen said with a grin, causing my blood to boil. He had easily struck up a conversation as if he'd forgotten all the past mistreatment. I couldn't help but feel furious. However, I reminded myself of my current situation and managed to suppress my anger. Carefully maintaining a cheerful appearance, I decided to respond to Cohen. Even if he got mad, it wouldn't compare to what I had endured. I called my daughter, who was a little distance away, and proudly said, "Well, let me introduce my daughter then." I probably had the smile I envisioned on my face. As I flaunted my smile to Cohen Kirby, Sarah ran up to me, and I embraced her. "Huh?" Cohen looked at us, his mouth agape in surprise. Clearly unable to accept the reality of the situation, especially from someone he had looked down upon for so long. Jolie, who had been smirking beside Cohen until then, also seemed unable to hide her shock. Ignoring them, I turned to talk to Sarah. "Did you find a good spot for the shoot?" I asked. Sarah beamed and nodded. "I want to shoot in front of the flower bed you were so particular about." She pointed to the flower bed and grabbed the equipment next to me, dashing toward it. As I watched her spirited back, Jolie screamed in disbelief. "Is that Sarah from the popular video sharing site? Why is she calling you Mom?" Her words caught the attention of Cohen and Jolie's daughter, Yvonne. "That's really her. Wow, I'm meeting the real deal for the first time. Hey, ma'am, can I get her autograph?" "That's a great idea, Yvonne. You really are a genius." Their arrogant remarks were so typical of them as a family. I shrugged my shoulders in resignation and firmly refused. "Sorry, but no. Sarah posts videos because she enjoys filming and editing, not because she wants to be famous. Sure, she's become well known, but that's not her goal." "But why not?" "It doesn't cost anything. Besides, my daughter is a genius." A combination of a celebrity and a genius makes for great content. Annoyed yet curious, I asked Cohen what made his daughter a genius. "All I've seen is her brash and insensitive behavior." "Where's the genius in that?" "How dare you? Yvonne is a bright student preparing for a prestigious middle school. She's going to be someone big." I wished for a concrete example of Yvonne's genius. But Jolie's claims lacked specifics, making me sigh in frustration. Cohen, displeased with my reaction, began bragging more about Yvonne. Yvonne is so talented, she never sticks to anything for long. She masters everything too quickly and then gets bored. It's tough having a genius for a child. Hearing this far from impressive boast, I grew tired of the conversation. Without responding much to Cohen's bragging, I moved towards where Sarah was filming. I could hear Cohen and his family still talking behind me, but I ignored them and called out to Sarah. "How's the shooting going, Sarah? Let's go to the cafe when you're done." Many people had gathered around Sarah, intrigued by her filming. Some recognized her as Sarah from the videos, creating a lively scene. "I just need to shoot the ending, then I'm done. Just a little longer," she replied cheerfully, waving to the people around her before starting to film the final scene. "Hey, Sarah! Let me be in the video with you." At an incredibly inopportune moment, Yvonne tried to interrupt the shoot. Noticing Yvonne's interruption, Sarah smiled at her and then resumed filming. After completing the shoot, Sarah was surrounded by onlookers. Many, like Yvonne, asked for her autograph, but Sarah politely declined each request. Instead, she engaged in friendly conversations with those who had approached her. Sarah continued her activities because she found joy in them, not because she sought fame. While she had indeed become famous, she never bragged about it. Autographs were not something she had even considered. So she chose to connect with her fans through conversation instead. When Yvonne had interrupted earlier, Sarah must have been annoyed. Sarah hid her feelings and gently refused. But I wondered if Yvonne understood that. When Sarah was about to leave, Yvonne, evidently not grasping Sarah's intentions, approached her. "Great job on the shoot. Now, how about filming with me next time?" Seeing Sarah's dumbfounded look, I couldn't stay out of it any longer. "I'm sorry, but Sarah doesn't do collaborations. That smile earlier was just being polite to you for interrupting her shoot." "What, is that just lip service? Learning such things at a young age, you're not raising her right." Jolie crossed her arms and looked down on Sarah. Sarah briefly stiffened but remained silent, not retorting. Feeling victorious, Jolie snorted and pressed on. "Are you saying Yvonne isn't worthy of filming with you? You know, Yvonne is a genius who can do anything. It could actually boost your popularity. Maybe you should learn to read the room better." Sarah looked at me, unsure how to respond. I sighed and confronted Jolie. "Enough already. You keep calling your daughter a genius, but I haven't seen a single concrete example. Being awarded isn't the only mark of greatness, but do you have any substantial achievements to brag about?" The onlookers who had been listening to our conversation seemed to agree with me. Jolie looked bitter under the pressure of their words, but Yvonne didn't seem to care. Instead, she proudly started listing her accomplishments. "I received a certificate at my piano recital for doing well in practice. And at my dance school, I got one for being able to dance a whole song. Plus, I've been awarded for perfect attendance at school. I've been recognized a lot, you know." Considering Sarah's age, Yvonne must be around the same age. Sarah was 12 years old, so probably Yvonne was also a middle schooler. Her claims felt somewhat trivial for her age. Unaware of the awkwardness, Yvonne looked at us expectantly for praise. I exchanged a helpless glance with Sarah, and we could only make troubled faces. The people around us reacted similarly, with some even bursting into laughter. Finally sensing the mood, Jolie awkwardly changed the topic. "So, speaking of your activities, how much do you earn? I doubt it's enough to afford a condo here, right?" Caught off guard by her desperate question, I decided to respond. Thankfully, Sarah's videos are quite popular on the video sharing site. She does earn money, but we're saving it for her future. We spend some on necessary equipment for filming. While this condominium is attractive, we don't need it as we already have our own home. Besides, I designed this place, so the success fee was substantial. My current husband runs a company, and combining our incomes, moving here wouldn't be a bad idea. I preemptively answered all the questions Jolie might have wanted to ask. As expected, she grimaced, glaring at Sarah and me. Cohen, having heard my explanation, seemed unable to argue back. However, Jolie, ever cunning, tried to butter me up despite her previously hostile attitude. "So, you built this place? Then you could get us a spot here, right? Our kids are about the same age. Can't you speak up for us out of pity?" I had no intention of agreeing to such a request. As I was about to firmly decline, Yvonne, misunderstanding the situation, chimed in with sparkling eyes. "We can live in this condo if we ask you? Hey, ma'am. We want to live here. Please help us out." I sighed, exasperated. And I decided to set them straight. "I'm sorry, but I can't guarantee you can live here. I might be able to refer you to the management company using my contacts, but there's a screening process. They'll check things like your job, income, potential for the future, and so on. I don't control the screening, so it's not certain you'll get in. It's up to you to make it happen." Jolie clicked her tongue upon hearing this, while Yvonne didn't seem to fully grasp the situation. Cohen then butted in, demanding the impossible. "Our daughter is asking, so make it happen. If you have the connections from building this place, get us through the screening." People around us started whispering at Cohen's unreasonable demands. I felt a headache coming on, wondering how to explain this obvious point. "I can't interfere with the screening process, that's beyond my control. If you want to live here, overcome the challenge on your own merits." At this, Cohen suddenly lost his temper. He began yanking flowers from a nearby bed and throwing them at me. I shielded Sarah from being hit, trying to calm Cohen down. But then, Jolie and Yvonne, following Cohen's lead, started doing the same. Jolie hurled insults and flowers at us, and Yvonne spewed verbal abuse at Sarah. I focused on protecting Sarah, but luckily, people around us intervened. Still, Cohen and his family continued their rampage, throwing anything they could find. Jolie picked up a stone and raised her arm. I grabbed her to stop her, but was shoved into the flower bed, hitting my head. The surrounding crowd became even more agitated and tried harder to stop them. However, the three individuals, who continued to behave violently in a fit of rage, were soon restrained. It's unclear who made the call, but the police arrived after hearing about the commotion. "Who called the cops?" Cohen shouted as the officers restrained him, but no one responded. Jolie, also being subdued by the police, tried to find out who had reported them. Yvonne stopped her tantrum but began crying as she watched her parents being detained. The area, which had been chaotic, suddenly quieted down when an officer's voice rang out. "Caught red-handed on suspicion of obstruction of justice." At these words, the commotion ceased in an instant. Cohen, who had caused the commotion, was apprehended by the police for his aggressive behavior. Holding my head and trying to comfort a tearful Sarah, I watched as he was taken away. At the same time, Jolie and Yvonne were also escorted to the police station. All three of them were put into a police car and driven away, disappearing from view. Despite the chaos they had caused, their swift removal by the police left me feeling somewhat relieved. But seeing Sarah on the verge of tears, yet still concerned for me, brought me back to reality. "Mom, you're hurt. Should we go to the hospital? Otherwise, you might." The commotion had overwhelmed Sarah, and she finally broke down crying. Hugging her, I apologized for involving her in such a situation. People around us expressed their concern. But I assured them I was fine, especially since Sarah was unharmed. When the sound of an ambulance siren approached, it seemed someone had called for medical assistance. The ambulance arrived, and alongside the police, I was taken in for treatment with Sarah by my side. As I boarded the ambulance, I took one last look at the damaged flower bed. The construction of the large condominium had inevitably created a sense of oppression. I had wanted to alleviate that by setting up a park within the grounds and placing a flower bed there. I hoped that the park would become a place of relaxation and conversation. The park where I first met my current husband had brought me much happiness. taking a break from work, I had been admiring the flowers in the park when he approached me. From there, I started talking to my current husband, who worked near that park, and we became close. Our relationship grew from occasional lunchtime meetings to dinners, and eventually, we got married. Later, we were blessed with our daughter Sarah, despite it being a late pregnancy. That park, with its flower beds, had brought so much joy into my life. So, I wanted the project I was involved in to offer similar opportunities for happiness. The result of that effort was the flower bed. Seeing the flower bed destroyed was heartbreaking, a sharp contrast to the happiness it symbolized. At the hospital, I received treatment, needing a few stitches. But fortunately, they were almost unnoticeable. Sarah, relieved to see me all right, managed to smile as we left the hospital. While waiting for the bill, I was questioned by the police and decided to file a complaint. I also resolved to hire a lawyer and ensure Cohen and his family faced the consequences of their actions. Jolie was arrested for her involvement in the assault. According to what my lawyer told me, Yvonne was taken in by Jolie's parents after both her parents got into trouble with the police. I thought it was sad enough for her, but she was now facing re-education from her grandparents. Yvonne, taken in by her grandparents, apparently faced stern reprimands for her usual behavior. And she was subjected to strict discipline in an attempt to rehabilitate her. It seems that for Cohen and Jolie, and especially for Yvonne, challenging days lie ahead. As for me, my injury has been healing well since then. I recently had my stitches removed, and there's hardly any sign of the injury now. Sarah has become even more popular since that day and is busily engaging in her activities. It turns out that the police and ambulance were called by one of Sarah's followers. After the shooting was over, Sarah sensed a sense of disquiet and quickly switched to live streaming to distribute the video. Thanks to that, when a big fight broke out, it seems that one of her followers took action. We're truly grateful for this intervention that helped to resolve the situation. Subsequently, Sarah wanted to thank whoever helped, so she called for them to come forward in a video. However, no one did, so she posted a video expressing her gratitude instead. When I went to the park where the disturbance took place to shoot the video, I found that the flower beds had been cleaned up. I was relieved to see that the volunteers had apparently done a good job of putting them in order after the incident. Since then, things have been going surprisingly well. My involvement in the condominium project has raised my professional profile. Thanks to that, I've been promoted and now serve as the head of the planning department. Sarah's video views are also increasing rapidly, and she herself continues to post videos with a happy look. My current husband is very caring and was quite concerned about us. Although I've fully recovered and there's no disruption to my daily life, he still occasionally checks on how I'm doing. Having a kind-hearted husband and seeing Sarah grow up healthy. And I have no problem with that, because my business and my family are prospering. I look forward to spending more happy moments with my family of 3. Today, I'm hosting a Christmas party for 20 family members. Make sure you don't embarrass me. I was completely baffled by Sean's declaration. I was sure the Christmas party was supposed to be at Sean's brother's house. After a while, my father-in-law and mother-in-law arrived. Seeing me clutching my stomach and breathing heavily, they clenched their fists and looked furious. The next moment, my mother-in-law shouted Sean and went back to the living room. In the living room, my father-in-law grabbed Sean by the collar, and the next moment, a loud smack echoed through the room. My name is Kelly Oakwood. I'm a 31-year-old housewife. I married Sean when I was 28. We met at a restaurant we both frequented. We were both regulars there and knew each other by face, nodding in acknowledgement whenever we saw each other. It was a casual acquaintance at first, but one day, when the restaurant's popular dish was down to the last one, Sean kindly offered it to me. Sean is a big guy with a loud voice to match. He's assertive, but at that moment, he bashfully said please, go ahead, and gave me the dish. His shy demeanor and large frame seemed so out of balance that I found it adorable. In hindsight, it was a complete oversight on my part. We exchanged numbers and went on several dates. Our first date was at a burger place, and on the next date, he took me to a fashionable bar while I was wearing casual shoes, without consulting me. Sean lacks consideration and has a habit of making decisions on his own without consulting others. Sean, who works for a major electronics manufacturer, seemed successful and boasted about being the first among his peers to advance in his career. His tendency to act unilaterally was a frequent topic of his pride. Perhaps love is blind, as I mistook Sean's behavior for masculinity. Looking back, this was a grave mistake. Sean proposed to me on our third date. I thought it was too soon, but he had already booked a wedding venue. I was more surprised by his initiative than anything else. Eventually, I gave in to Sean's persistence, and we had a whirlwind marriage within a few months. My parents were surprised, but were also overwhelmed by Sean's assertiveness. Sean wanted me to quit my job and become a housewife upon our marriage, but it was too sudden, and I couldn't leave my job. I told Sean I would work until we had children, and he reluctantly agreed. Sean was the type who wanted his wife to take care of the home. The first year of our marriage was blissful, without any major issues. Sean continued to make decisions unilaterally, so things like buying a car or choosing a new home were done without my input. I had always dreamed of seeing the northern lights on our honeymoon, but before I knew it, we were eating pancakes in Hawaii. If I overlooked Sean's self-centered behavior, it was a happy life. However, things started to change dramatically when I became pregnant after a year. It felt less like tumbling down a hill and more like riding a roller coaster. When I found out I was pregnant, I quit my job and stayed at home as Sean and I had agreed. To our surprise, I was expecting twins. Sean seemed deeply moved, saying I'm going to be a father to 2 kids at once. He was so happy that he even bragged about it at work. Sean's phone wallpaper was the ultrasound image of the twins. Sean was showing off the ultrasound image everywhere. I secretly thought it was in poor taste, but I kept quiet. Since it was my first pregnancy with twins, I felt more nervous and anxious than happy. Sean was too caught up in his excitement to pay any attention to my worries. The obstetrician advised me to have a managed hospital stay due to the risks associated with multiple births. Sean agreed to this. It seemed even he was worried about what might happen. Being in the hospital was a relief for me, but I was also worried about something else. Our home. Sean doesn't do any housework. Being the eldest of 3 brothers, he had never done any household chores. It's more accurate to say he couldn't rather than he didn't. Sean comes from a distinguished family, and his house is the main family home. Perhaps that's why he was spoiled growing up. He never had to do housework, and it seems someone always took care of his personal needs. I couldn't leave Sean alone at home. I couldn't imagine coming home to an untidy house after being discharged. So, I asked Sean's parents for help. I asked them if Sean could stay at their house while I was in the hospital, or if my mother-in-law could take care of our house. I get along well with my in-laws. The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law issue doesn't exist for us. Despite coming from a prestigious family, they're very approachable and easy to talk to. Because Sean is incapable of doing housework and has a self-centered nature, my in-laws were very grateful that I married him. Sean ended up staying with his parents until I was discharged from the hospital. I checked into the maternity hospital with peace of mind. Under the care of the doctors and nurses, I safely delivered twins through a cesarean section. They were a healthy boy and girl, crying loudly. When I was discharged, Sean, both sets of parents, Sean's siblings and their families, and my parents all came. It was a gathering of 10 people. The nurses and the doctor were amazed to see so many visitors. They commented on how happy my family seemed. From the outside, we must have looked like a happy family. I was a bit embarrassed by the commotion but secretly happy. That moment was the peak of my happiness. From there, my challenging life began. Sean's attitude changed completely. My life before and after giving birth changed 180 degrees, and for the worse. Issues I thought were problematic before came to the forefront, and any slight hard-working aspect of him disappeared. It all started when Sean returned home. When Sean got home, the first thing he said was, "There's no place like home," and stretched out big. I agreed that there's nothing like your own home. But there I was, with twins in a baby carrier and backpack, hands full. Thinking about life ahead, I just couldn't relax and stretch out like that. Both Sean's parents and mine insisted on giving us space, saying, "You guys need to manage on your own." My parents live about 2 hours away by train, and they had booked a hotel for the day. I tried to convince them to stay with us, saying, "It's a waste, stay at our place," but they quickly headed to the hotel after leaving the hospital. Home is nice, but my mom was always nagging. In the living room, he carelessly threw the baby items we got from the hospital on the floor and flopped onto the sofa. Then he reclined and made a surprising demand. "I want some hot tea." There I was, holding babies both in my arms and on my back. And he's asking for hot tea. How does he expect me to fill the kettle, boil the water, put tea leaves in the teapot, and pour it into a cup? And there he was, complaining about a sore shoulder and rotating it. I decided to ignore his request for the moment. I put the twins down on the baby bed we set up next to the living room. That's when I felt a dull pain in my abdomen. The cesarean section incision hadn't fully healed. My body tensed up in pain, my face contorted, but Sean didn't even glance my way. He was casually playing with his smartphone. I couldn't yell at him and risk waking the peacefully sleeping twins. I had just been discharged from the hospital and hadn't regained my strength yet. After putting the twins to sleep, I reluctantly kept quiet. I decided I had no choice but to prioritize the twins' sleep and my recovery. Sean was not only uninterested in housework but also in childcare. Just a little while ago, we were the envy of nurses for being so happy, but now I felt only anxiety. The next day, my parents came early in the morning. By the afternoon, Sean's parents had also arrived. With both sets of parents and me, we began the arduous task of childcare. Sean, as expected, was of no help at all. In fact, he was more trouble than the babies. While watching Sean, I did my best with my first experience of childcare. My mother-in-law said, "This is the time when children teach you to be a mother." It's hard to believe someone as kind as her is Sean's mother. My parents live farther away than Sean's, so my mom can't come over easily. It looks like I'll be relying more on Sean's family. Sean's dad is still working, so I'll have to depend mostly on my mother-in-law. I'm so glad she's a kind person. Sean's parents were very affectionate towards the twins. Even when I was clumsily changing diapers, they reassured me, "No need to rush, you're doing fine." Amidst this, Sean was the one who felt left out. Since we were all focused on the twins, he seemed to feel excluded. He became more demanding than usual, saying, "I'm thirsty, I want to read the newspaper, I'm a bit hungry." Sean's dad talked to him, since Sean wasn't participating in childcare. It can be hard for fathers to get involved in childcare, but it's rewarding once you try. Both Sean's mom and dad are kind people. I couldn't help but wonder how someone like Sean could come from such wonderful parents. My dad also chimed in, sharing how nervous he was the first time he took me out. However, Sean showed no interest in their valuable advice. All that came from him were half-hearted responses like, "Oh, and is that so?" The stories from Sean's dad and my dad were meant to ease the awkwardness and fears of making mistakes, a kind gesture towards Sean. But it was like talking to the wind, Sean was unaffected. Then, Sean really messed up. Not only was he uninterested in childcare, but his selfish behavior finally made his parents angry. While I was breastfeeding the twins, Sean complained to me, "When's dinner? I'm starving." He even demanded a proper meal, not just something pre-made. I was perplexed about what to do when my father-in-law stepped in. "You're not a child, if you're hungry, make something yourself." His response was perfectly reasonable. Yet, Sean became defensive and said, "You're a housewife, so it's natural for you to cook." I rarely use pre-made food when I cook. But for Sean, Even one pre-made item meant I was slacking off. Sean's mom joined in the argument. Babies can't cook and eat by themselves. Then his dad added, if you're so concerned about feeding, why don't you give the baby formula? You could do that. Faced with criticism from everyone, Sean made a surprising remark. If I start doing things like breastfeeding, then what's left for the mother to do? Both sets of parents were dumbfounded. I could only sigh. Afterwards, Sean's mom lectured him endlessly, and his dad thoroughly taught him how to change diapers and other childcare tasks. Sean looked lifeless, obviously doing it unwillingly and in a bad mood. 2 years passed, and I became pregnant again. Sean hadn't changed at all over these years. I continued to be overwhelmed with childcare and household chores. Without the help of Sean's parents, our life would have probably fallen apart. Sean's mom helped with housework, and his dad tried to teach Sean about childcare. Meanwhile, Sean seemed to resent his parents' involvement, always finding excuses to go out. Sean claimed he was busy with business trips and overtime, but I think he just didn't want to be at home. This pregnancy wasn't twins, but my morning sickness was worse than before. Especially the smell of cooked rice was unbearable, so inevitably, bread became a staple at our table. Sean was unhappy about this too, constantly complaining that he wanted freshly cooked rice. Angered by this, his mom told him, if you want a meal, make it yourself. Surrounded by his parents, Sean reluctantly cooked the rice. Regardless of how it looked, I tried to eat the meal he prepared for the first time. However, due to my morning sickness, I couldn't finish it. Sean exaggeratedly sighed at the sight of the uneaten food. I went through all this trouble, and this is it? If it's too awful to eat, just say so, he said before storming out of the house. About an hour later, Sean returned. From that point on, he stopped doing any household chores or childcare. His excuse was, you're just wasting people's kindness. Unashamed, Sean started going out fishing on weekends as his hobby. On weekdays, he would go out for drinks, citing work commitments, and come home late. There were days I didn't even see his face. Realizing this couldn't go on, I apologized several times about the meal and asked for his help around the house. I requested him to come home a bit earlier on weekdays and to spend at least some weekends at home. I was hoping he would spend even a little time with the twins. But Sean's response was unbelievable. I've taken care of the twins for 2 years. You should be used to it by now, he said before leaving for fishing. He even said, it's only one baby this time, not like I can do anything. The 2-year-old twins, thanks to Sean's indifferent attitude, were not at all attached to him. In fact, they seemed to dislike being around him. They would frown and look like they were about to cry whenever Sean walked by. My biggest regret is wondering why I got pregnant with a 3rd child. I must have been fooled by Sean's occasional kind gestures. It's unfortunate, but there's nothing I can do about it now. The baby in my growing belly is innocent. Despite my mixed feelings, my pregnancy progressed smoothly, and I reached full term. Like the last time, I was scheduled for a cesarean section. Having experienced it before, I knew what to prepare for the hospital stay. However, the due date being right after Christmas meant a hectic holiday season. There's a big family gathering at Sean's parents' house for Christmas, but I won't be able to attend this year. The biggest problem with this childbirth is Sean. This time, there's the additional responsibility of taking care of the twins. It seems impossible without Sean's help. I wished Sean could take time off work to match the birth, but I doubt that will happen. As a last-ditch effort, I asked Sean if he could take care of the kids after he got back from work. His response was cold and devoid of any kindness. I can't make that kind of promise. What he said next was even worse. It's embarrassing for a man to take time off work for his wife's childbirth. It's like being a useless husband under his wife's thumb. I couldn't hold back and was about to retort when Sean demanded dinner. This stopped me in my tracks, and I lost the will to argue. Upset by my request, he continued to complain during dinner. At 2 years old, they should be able to eat by themselves. Sure, they might be able to eat, but they can't cook. Sean lacks that kind of imagination. I was so annoyed that I snapped back. Well, you should be more capable than a 2-year-old. Why don't you show them how it's done? Unfazed by my sarcasm, Sean said something outrageous. I'm the breadwinner. You're all living off what I earn. So you should be grateful and make me dinner. I couldn't understand his logic. His arguments were too far-fetched. Until I went to the hospital, Sean kept saying, I'm the one providing for you. I never intended to quit my job. It was Sean who pushed the idea of me being a stay-at-home wife after we got married. Every time he says, I'm providing for you, I think to myself, what nerve. Frustrated, I reached the week I was scheduled to be admitted to the hospital. Then, Sean made another tactless comment. You should attend the Christmas party. I couldn't understand why he would say that. Apparently, it looked bad for the head of the family to attend alone. He had no understanding of the pain and risks of childbirth. Childbirth is a life-risking endeavor. Sean's unreasonable demands continued. Why do I have to attend alone? Who's going to cook and serve drinks? It's as if he mistook me for a servant or a maid. The idea of risking my life for Sean's reputation was unbelievable. Sean often comes up with such ideas. We went back and forth with come and it's impossible several times. Finally, my father-in-law talked to Sean, and it was decided that I wouldn't attend. As the new year approached and the day before my hospital admission arrived, Sean was still sulking. Unfortunately, today was the day of the Christmas party. On the day of the party, I was lying down with a tight belly next to the twins. Suddenly, I noticed Sean standing over me. With sleepy eyes, I looked up at him. Today, I'm hosting a Christmas party for 20 family members. Make sure you don't embarrass me. What was Sean thinking? I was totally confused by his statement. I was sure the Christmas party was supposed to be at Sean's brother's house. Sean squatted down and shook my shoulder. Prepare a meal for 20 relatives and some desserts that women would enjoy, he said. It seemed Sean had unilaterally decided to host the Christmas party at our house. Everyone in the family, including Sean's parents, had been considerate about our twins and my current pregnancy. I couldn't understand why suddenly 20 people were coming over today. I hadn't noticed, but there were missed calls from my mother-in-law and father-in-law on my phone. I'm due to be hospitalized tomorrow. I could go into labor at any moment. Hosting 20 relatives in such a condition is absolutely impossible. I told Sean, it's impossible to do all this at the last minute. I asked, even if it costs more, can we have a catering service or something? I even humbly suggested. But Sean exploded in anger. I said we're doing it at my house. Are you trying to embarrass me? As the wife of the eldest son of the main family, you should keep up appearances. Sean was imposing his selfish will on me. Continuing with outdated notions like a wife should just be quiet and obey her husband. I no longer had the energy to argue back. When I fell silent, Sean seemed to take it as agreement and smiled. Then he said, I'm going to pick up the relatives now, so you get everything ready for hosting, and left immediately. With everything so arranged, I couldn't refuse. It would cause trouble for all the relatives. So, I started to prepare, despite my large belly. I emailed Sean, I can't go shopping now, so I'll have to make do with what's available. Thinking about my hospital stay, I had stocked up on food for Sean. So the fridge was nearly empty, no matter. I managed to prepare the food while pressing on my tight belly. For drinks and alcohol, which I was short on, I decided to order delivery. Just as I finished all the preparations, I got a message from Sean that he was on his way home. In just 2 hours, I had managed to prepare the meals and drinks. I wanted to pat myself on the back. I put the twins to bed in the back room as they were starting to doze off. Soon, I heard voices and the front door opening. I went to the entrance to greet everyone. My mother-in-law and father-in-law asked me if I was okay. Their call earlier must have been out of concern. I just smiled vaguely, unable to say much else. The living and dining rooms were packed with 20 people as the Christmas party began. I was busy serving food and pouring drinks, with no time to sit down. Everyone kept asking me, "Are you okay?" and "Don't overdo it," to which I just smiled and brushed off. Sean, on the other hand, was in a great mood, boasting, "She's tough, that's her strong point." But Sean's parents and brother had frowns on their faces. Due to standing and moving around to serve drinks, the tightness in my belly became unbearable. I excused myself, saying, "I'm going to check on the sleeping kids," and left the room. As I looked at the children's sleeping faces, my eyelids grew heavy, and I lay down. After a while, the tightness turned into pain. Not wanting to worry everyone, I covered my mouth with both hands. But the pain in my abdomen grew stronger and clearer. It had been 3 hours since Sean sprung the news of the Christmas party on me. As I endured the pain, suddenly the door opened. It was Sean's brother. It seemed to have mistaken the room for the bathroom. "Sorry, wrong room," he said before closing the door and hurrying away. Shortly after, Sean's parents came in. Seeing me clutching my stomach and breathing heavily, they clenched their fists and looked furious. The next moment, Sean's mother shouted Sean and went back to the living room. I also staggered to my feet and returned to the living room. There, Sean's father had grabbed Sean by the collar, and the next moment a loud smack echoed through the room. Sean's cheek was red. His father had slapped him. His father's eyes were sharp, and his usually gentle face looked demonic. Even I, who wasn't being scolded, was taken aback. Sean was frozen in shock, his eyes wide open. "What are you doing?" His father yelled so loudly that Sean flinched. All the relatives who had been drinking and chatting stopped and stared at Sean in silence. "Do you understand Kelly's condition?" Sean's mother glared at him with a fierce look. One of the relatives noticed me and offered me a seat on the sofa. Others began to confront Sean. "You said the delivery wasn't due yet, but she's about to give birth. I thought you said she was still in the safe period," were some of the comments I heard. Apparently, Sean had told the relatives that my delivery wasn't due yet to get them to come. He had told his parents that there were no signs of labor yet, and my hospitalization was postponed. Everyone started looking at Sean with contempt. Relatives with children the same age as the twins were there, and some of them were saying, "I can't believe it." Women were heard saying, "If I were in her shoes, I'd be horrified, this is unforgivable, and he's the worst kind of husband." Others were saying, "We didn't know, sorry, and Sean deceived us." The atmosphere was more like a funeral than a Christmas party. Unable to bear the tension, Sean started making pitiful excuses. "She's using the twins and her pregnancy as an excuse to slack off on housework." Everyone focused on Sean, shocked at what he was saying. "That's why I made her cook for 20 people today and serve drinks." What he was saying made no sense to me. And probably even less to everyone else. But Sean continued. "She's been slacking off. This doesn't even make up for it." There were murmurs of disbelief. He made her cook? And for 20 people? Sean began to sweat under the accusing glares. A female relative suggested they break up the party and began cleaning up. The twins' cries could be heard from the back. Sean's parents headed to the twins. Sean's brother has a child about the same age as ours. He looked at Sean with contempt. And muttered softly, "He's the worst." Sean was being called the worst as both a husband and a father, shrinking under the scrutiny. His usual assertive and arrogant demeanor was nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, my belly started to hurt. The intervals of pain were getting shorter. It was probably labor. I called out to Sean, who was being scolded and shrinking away. But he didn't respond. Someone asked me, "Should we call the hospital?" and I nodded slightly. Another person brought me a phone, and I called the hospital. They told me to come right away. I informed everyone, "I'm going to the hospital now," but couldn't get up. Sean's brother suggested calling an ambulance, and that's when Sean reacted. "If you call an ambulance, tell them not to use the siren. It's embarrassing if the neighbors find out." I couldn't believe he was more concerned about appearances than my condition. Everyone was stunned by his words, and Sean continued. Go by yourself. It's your fault for ruining the mood anyway. It definitely wasn't my fault, it was all because of Sean's lies. Everyone else must think the same. Amidst the stunned silence, another smack was heard. Sean's mother had returned and slapped his cheek. Sean, his cheek held, was tearful. I never thought you would be such a rotten person. Giving birth is a life-threatening endeavor. Behind her, Sean's father was holding the twins, looking furious. The pain Kelly is experiencing is nothing like this, he exclaimed, trembling with anger and carefully setting the twins down. I'm not in the wrong. It's because I'm the one supporting them. Sean insisted, saying it was my fault for embarrassing him in front of others and that he wasn't to blame. Even in this situation, he was flaunting his elitist attitude. Of course, no one sympathized with him. The sister-in-law raised her hand. I haven't been drinking, I can drive. Everyone cheered. It was decided she would drive our car, and people began to move quickly, helping with my hospital bag and cleaning up. The bag was ready in the bedroom, so I asked Sean's mother to fetch it. Sean's father started helping with the dishes. Sean alone, rubbing his slapped cheek, muttered, If you weren't my parents, I'd sue you. His face turned red. Perhaps embarrassed at his wounded pride. Meanwhile, the twins started crying loudly because of the commotion. The men took turns comforting them while the women hurried to clean up. Sean didn't help at all. Everyone else seemed to have stopped paying attention to him. I felt utterly disgusted with Sean. I honestly thought I no longer needed such a useless man. Sean's brother, who's good at entertaining children, started playing with the twins. He said, I often play with kids at home, so leave it to me, and started playing with the twins. I managed to stand up with support and informed him about the toys in the kids' room and that they didn't have any food allergies. I added that he could use anything in the fridge. Sean kept muttering, I'm not wrong, but I ignored him and headed for the door. Sean's sister-in-law then drove me to the hospital. Upon arrival, a nurse quickly called a doctor, who took me to the delivery room. It seemed labor could happen at any moment. As expected, as soon as I was on the delivery bed, I gave birth. It was a relief that the delivery was smooth. The only one who suffered was my sister-in-law. She couldn't go home and had to stay until the next morning. The day after I safely gave birth, Sean's parents came to the hospital with the twins. After the incident, Sean sulked in a corner of the room, drinking canned beer. Sean's father took him to the bedroom. Not wanting the children to see their father being scolded, a thoughtful gesture from him. I heard Sean's father scolded him all night. And Sean looked deflated. Sean's father told me this with a wry smile. After a while, Sean came to my hospital room. In front of his parents, he was meek and apologized in a low voice, saying, Sorry about yesterday. The fact that both his parents had hit him seemed to have a significant impact on him. Sensing the situation, Sean's parents left us alone. As soon as they were gone, Sean's attitude changed. I was slapped by Dad and Mom because of you. He continued to complain about how I was inconsiderate and not thoughtful enough. At that moment, I was utterly fed up with Sean. I firmly decided to divorce him. Despite feeling anxious about becoming a single mother of 3, I knew I couldn't stay with Sean. I pressed the nurse call button without hesitation. A nurse came right away. Sean's parents followed her, returning to the room. He's a stranger to me. Please ask him to leave. The nurse looked confused, but Sean's mother understood. And promptly escorted Sean out of the room. Sean's parents left the hospital with him. Before they left, they told me my parents would come in the afternoon. Indeed, my parents arrived later that day. I told them about the previous day's events and my decision to divorce Sean. My parents initially thought Sean had cheated when they heard about the divorce from Sean's mother. They had been under the impression that divorce meant infidelity. They never imagined a heavily pregnant wife being commanded by her husband to prepare for a Christmas party and serve drinks. I explained everything to my parents, including being forced to cook for 20 people and serve drinks, how hard it had been, and how much I had endured. We all cried as I spoke. By the end of our conversation, we were smiling, relieved after crying. Rest at home after the birth, my mother kindly said. I was discharged safely and am now recuperating at my parents' house. About the divorce, Sean's parents agreed there was no reason to oppose it. The only one strongly against it was Sean. He kept contacting me, but I blocked his calls and told his parents not to let him contact me. It seems Sean has lost his mental stability without me, who he treated like a servant. Living alone, Sean couldn't manage to clean up his house, and it became cluttered with trash. At work, he vented his frustration by repeatedly committing acts of power harassment, nearly facing disciplinary action from human resources. Despite this, Sean's attitude didn't change, and he even harassed his work clients. Eventually, Sean was fired. At that time, it seemed no one sympathized with him. Now, he's working in the fields at his parents' home, apparently being reprimanded and taught a lesson. Sean often cries saying, "The house where I lived with Kelly was my oasis." I heard all of that from his mother, with whom I'm still in contact. But for me, that house was nothing but a desert. With the help of Sean's parents, our divorce was successfully finalized. The house we lived in was sold, and I received all the money from the sale as alimony. I've decided to live at my parents' home. I still keep in touch with Sean's parents and brother. Sometimes, they come to play with the twins who say they missed the sister and brother who played with us that time. For Sean's parents, the twins are still their grandchildren. They visit when they can, happily playing with all 3 grandchildren. The kids are fond of their grandpa and grandma. I feel that if the Christmas party hadn't happened, I might not have been able to go to the hospital. Sean, on his own, couldn't have managed to take me to the hospital and look after the twins. Plus, that incident helped me make up my mind about Sean. In a way, I'm thankful to Sean for holding that party at our house. It really is a case of blessing in disguise. You never know how things will turn out. I'll never forget the gratitude I feel towards those who helped me then. With my 3 children, I want to become even happier and help others just as I was helped.